Hello, I'm Sune from Cobrid, and today I will try to give you some tips on how you can use Google Sheets to pull data from almost any API or data source like that. And you can use that for a lot of different things. You can use that to do some manipulations within Google Sheets itself, or you can use it as a data source in Cobrid Deploy for your KPIs. So you can actually transform data from various sources and use Google Sheets as sort of a MVP, a minimal viable product kind of solution to try some stuff out, and that's really cool. It's gonna be a bit technical, but it is also the Nerdy Thursday video, so grab yourself a nice cup of coffee and enjoy.
So let's get started. This shows the end result, so that is what we want to achieve throughout this tutorial kind of thing. So as you can see, it's a nice graph that shows average CO2 emissions in Denmark. And that is data that's coming from this free open data set in Denmark called from Energi Data Service. We can actually query CO2 emissions in Denmark from different price areas and so on. So that's an open data set. You can use all kinds of different data sets, but in this case, we're going to use this. So as you can see here, I clicked the data API because we wanted to pull it from an API. And there are various ways we can do that. We can use SQL as shown here and use that endpoint. So there is an example of how we can query it using this. That is very specific to this API, so I'm not going into details on that. This is what the data will look like when we pull it into Google Sheets after we have applied the different functions and stuff that we're going to do later on. So this is the data set. We have the 3 different columns and a strange looking date, but I'll get back to that. So we are going to go into script editor to add a new script that can pull the data. And in there will be an empty file. It will not be called CO2 emissions, obviously, but I've called it that. And then we'll have this timer function that I've created. So as you can see, I've added this URL. It's a bit long with different kinds of SQL and so on. I'll not go into details. If you're interested in that, then just hit me up and I'll explain it to you. But it's just to say that we take some data from this service. I've limited to 12 entries because we get data every 5 minutes, and I've set it to pull every hour, so I need 12 records to get a whole hour. I'll use this URL fetch app fetch to get the data, and that will give us some JSON. And we can use JSON.parse to actually parse it into an object that we can use in this. We use the spreadsheet app get active spreadsheet to actually get the current spreadsheet, and then we get the sheet 1, that is the name of this sheet. It could be called something else, but in this case it's called sheet 1. So that will give us the sheet that we want to append to. Now I've passed this result and I've called it object, and in that there's something called results and records will contain the values. As you can see here, we use the ones called minutes, 5 DK and CO2 emissions, and that is coming straight from the data set as shown here. 5 minutes DK here, and that is date format. And then we have CO2 emission over there to the right. So that is what we are referencing. And yes, so here you can see we have actually created, and then later we will append that using this sheet append row. But here we are using an array to create a new row, and each entry in that array will be a new column. So I have 3 different, as highlighted here, 3 different types and delimited by a comma. And I'm using this average function, which is quite unique, and then I'm using this get time to get this very strange looking date format, which is Unix time milliseconds. So that is the time elapsed in milliseconds since 1970. So this function, that is quite unique. So I'm going to get an average, and I'm referencing B2, that is the first entry. And then I'm using this indirect function to actually reference this specific row that we have just inserted in this, that we're actually going to insert here. So I'm addressing row, that is this row, and then I'm taking column -1, so I'm going to insert it in column C, but I want to reference B instead. So that's the -1. So with that function, I'm referencing every entry until this entry and using that for the average. So that's quite clever, I think. And it's very cool that we can use built-in Google Sheets functions. So when that is done, we just need to import data, and we can do that using the Google Sheets integration in Deploy if we want to use the data there. We just need to sign in. That could take a little bit because Google is not always the fastest to sign in and all that, but I will get my account here and allow to access my Google Drive so that I can pull the data into Deploy and use it for some KPIs. And then I can give this a name. I will call this CO2 emissions Denmark. And the folder is called live data. So that's the folder in Google Sheets, or Google Drive, sorry. And the sheet is called CO2 emissions DK, as you can see up here. So that's what I named it. I've already created one, so I'm not going to create one again. In the KPIs, I've created this KPI. You can do all types of things with formulas and stuff, so you can combine this data with other types of data. Very cool. We'll just keep it simple. And you can see here I've chosen the CO2 emissions integration that we created before. I'm referencing sheet 1 and the column average CO2 emissions that we appended. So that is sheet 1 and then average CO2 emissions in column C. Now I need to tell Deploy where it will get the dates, and that is the column called date. And as I said, we've used this Unix time milliseconds. So that's what we're telling it, and we will not accumulate it because it is already aggregated data. Now it will load, and it takes a bit because I have a few thousand rows, so that takes a little bit to load, but you can see it will load here eventually. And that will show us a nice looking graph similar to the one you saw in the beginning of the video. And that's also what we are doing here. We're just waiting for it to load. It's a little bit of data, so it takes a little bit, but it will load here in just a moment. Like so, and then it will load the data from the Google Sheet. It takes a little bit. That's the first time. It will be faster the second time you load the page. Or if you have less data than what is the case here. And here we go. Here we have it. That's what it looks like when pulled into Deploy. Thank you for watching.